In this video, I will explain the logical fallacy called the argument from silence. I'll begin with the general form, explain why it is a mistake, and use some examples of people making this sort of mistake. Hopefully, by the end of the video, you will be able to spot and deal with this fallacy. And if not, well, if you think there is a good reason to watch this video without liking it and subscribing to the channel, then say so now. Well, I didn't hear anything, so be sure to hit the subscribe button and the like button. An argument from silence is a special case of the argument from ignorance fallacy. This informal fallacy occurs when you are encouraged to adopt a belief based on silence. The general form is as follows. Person A makes a statement about X. Person B remains silent. Anyone then concludes that the statement A made on X is true or false. The conclusion here is fallacious. Nobody can form a conclusion on the truth value of X based on silence. Person A should not assume that their statement on X is correct just because person B was silent. Person B cannot claim that by being silent, they demonstrated their opposition to person A's statement. A third person watching this conversation should also not conclude anything about the truth value of X based on the silence of person B. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. If you want to establish the truth value of X, you need evidence and good, valid arguments. Of course, there are cases where this kind of argument is not fallacious. For example, if person B is an expert on the subject matter of X, then one might assume that their silence indicates support for person A's statement. Even though this is not fallacious, it is still a weak argument. Let's look at some examples of people making this mistake. The first example concerns politics. Imagine a politician saying the following to another politician. When I stood up for workers' rights, you did nothing. You are not on the side of workers. It is fallacious to claim the second politician is not on the side of workers simply because they did or said nothing at some point in the past. They may have had good reason for being silent. This silence alone is not enough to claim that they are not on the side of workers. If you want to determine the politician's stance, then give them time and opportunity to express their view. Then perhaps you might have the evidence to conclude whether or not they are on the side of workers. The second example concerns a book review. Imagine a writer making the following comment after reviewing a book. I think the book is vulgar and artistically weak. Now imagine someone else responding with the following. This book highlights the suffering of a minority group, but you deny the existence of their suffering. Yes, it is correct the writer did not mention the suffering in their comment, but from this absence, can we conclude that they deny its existence, or that they are against the minority group? No, it is fallacious to make such conclusions. The writer has said nothing on the issue of suffering. We cannot form a conclusion from this silence. Again, if you want to know what the writer thinks about the minority group and their suffering, just ask them and give them time to think and answer the question. In this example, the writer has expressed their professional opinion of the book, but the other person has made an insidious argument. Not only are they making a fallacious claim regarding the writer, but they are effectively saying that any comment on the book has to acknowledge the suffering. This is a restriction of freedom of expression and is basically an attempt to control what people think about the book. The next example concerns magic. Imagine a magician has just performed a trick in front of an audience. He claims to have superhuman powers and following the performance challenges the audience. Can anyone here explain this? Hello? Nobody? When the audience is challenged to explain things or to provide a better explanation than the one given, and this audience remains silent, this does not necessarily mean that the audience agrees with the explanation given, or that anyone else watching should also believe this explanation. It is perfectly possible for the audience to not believe the explanation given and not have a better explanation themselves. The fact that at some point in time this audience were not able to produce another explanation does not mean that the explanation given was a valid one. The explanation should be assessed on its own. The final example is a bit absurd, but if you are struggling to understand this fallacy and for some reason are still watching this video, then this example should help. It concerns animals. Imagine that you walk up to a cow holding a gun and you say to the cow, "Hey, give me one good reason why I shouldn't shoot you right now." The cow does not respond. It remains silent. Can you claim that you are justified to shoot the cow just because it was silent? No, you have no idea if the animal has understood you, let alone have time to consider your question and respond to it. And how would you know if the animal has responded to your question? In any case, the absence of a response is not evidence. It is the absence of evidence, and we cannot form a conclusion based just on this absence. Finally, I'd like to point out that no animals were harmed in the making of this video. When you see someone make this kind of argument, consider why the person might be silent. Perhaps they have no expertise on the subject matter. Perhaps they have not been given time or an opportunity to say something. Perhaps no one is listening. Don't assume that their silence is evidence. Regardless of whether it is for or against the motion, silence cannot justify either. To do so would be to commit this fallacy, an argument from silence. As always, politely point out the mistake, develop better arguments, and have more productive discussions. I hope you now have a better understanding of this fallacy.